Okay, so today we're going to be looking at Dr. Glasser's 1984 behavior car. And let me share the screen and show you that we're going to be going from this. Can you see it?
Yes. Yes.
We're going from this, which that's a person's head, and this is what they're thinking inside, I'm supposing, which looks like a car with some labels on it. And then I don't know exactly how much time later, but Dr. Glasser turned his behavior car from that, let me stop here, to this,
Yes.
which was certainly added more things to it and made it more, a little bit confusing, but also a little bit easier to understand how it works. And so then also he came up with this little diagram here that has all of the different ways the car was used. So let me pull this up. I think I have it here somewhere. Uh, Here comes Sue. It says 306. What are you saying, Sharon? You're saying that yours says 306.
Printing of 306, 305. Down at the very bottom here. That's
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what
was
mine says too on this one. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So I don't know that any others have come out since then. They've been reprinted, but I don't think the design has changed since then.
Yeah. Okay. And let me
I
go
have
ahead.
a question.
Yes. What's your question?
I have one that I received called Chart Talk.
Yes.
Is that okay?
What? Yeah, sure. That's fine. What year is that one? Does it say?
Well, I on the back of it, I can't see it. I wrote for it somewhere in Quebec. It doesn't say on the back of it at all that I can see. But it
and I have that one too.
Okay, it says it was produced by Dr. Glasser's wife. Yes, and also then the map. I'm assuming this is the correct one.
Right. Well, I know that he did redo these several times, and I'm like you, Sharon. I think all mine are 1905 also. I know he did do several of those. I never did really understand what the changes were. But anyway, but here you can see on this one that he had dated it November 1984, whenever he had the little picture in his mind. And then if I can find out, you cannot minimize Zoom. Okay. Good to know. Well, I guess I'll just need to read this to you. I had put it somewhere and now I'm unable to find it. So it's a list of, this is the list of things that Dr. Glasser had put in keeping with the car. And I'm just going to tell you what what it says is, it says our body is our vehicle for getting through life. And comparing it to a car is a reasonably close analogy. So I thought that was real interesting. And so then we have a list here of what the car represents and how it acclimates, or how it comes in comment with the body itself. So first one is the motor. Shall I put this back up so you can see it? We can see it in the share the screen. Okay, so the car, first of all, we have the motor, and it has 5 cylinders. You see those 5 cylinders, and can you name them?
Yes.
And
Yes,
then
I
he
can.
says, in the body, here's the car on one side and the body on the other side. And in the body, we have 5 basic needs. And who wants to say what those basic needs are?
Survival, freedom, fun, power, and love.
Right. And then we have the steering wheel. And on the left-hand side of the car is the steering wheel. On the right-hand side of the car is the knowledge album. And this album, this is all I know from the day I was born until today. It's all I know up to this moment in time. And then back on the left, we look at the car as the steering wheel right here. And in looking at it on the right-hand side from his right from the body, we're looking at the quality world. That this is what I know about, but this maybe is what I would like to know more about. This is what it's called the quality world. And then on the left-hand side with the body, we're looking at the starter. Now, I don't know just exactly where the starter is, but it's somewhere in here that turns over so that the car will begin to go. And so he equated it on the right-hand side with the scales. And he called those scales neurotransmitters. That those scales, it's something that's inside our body, and it kind of gives us the message of whether we're on track or not. Then on the left-hand side, we're looking at the wheels. And he designates that we have front wheels and we also have back wheels. And those wheels, although they work in tandem, they are individual in their comparing it in looking at the body. The thoughts we think, the actions we take, the feelings we feel, and the physiology, which is, the heart beating and the body itself just taking care of itself. And then on the right-hand side, we're looking at the 4 components of behavior, which is exactly the words that are on this card that he's drawn. But it's also telling us that this is what we as a whole makes us who we are. And then we have a front wheel steering wheel, meaning that these are the ones that go forward and these are the ones that follow. The front wheels go forward and the back wheels follow. And that in looking at all of these together, he said it's an arbitrary control over action and thought. An arbitrary control. Does anyone want to delve into what that means? We have, okay, we'll go on. Then he has also underneath the car a 4-wheel drive. And on the right-hand side, it says it's momentum when the back wheels feel good. That sometimes those back wheels feel good. Sometimes they're angry and frustrated and upset and they don't feel so good. And so therefore the body is not working as judiciously as it could. He also has on the left-hand side the gear shift, which represents on the right-hand side the forward or the reverse. We're either going forward or we're going backward. We are, we're. And then on the left-hand side, we're looking at the windshield. And here it is. He's got a convertible here on this one, but it's the windshield. You're still looking through the windshield so that the bugs don't come in and hit you in the face. And it underneath the windshield, he has its clear glass, but it's tinted. It has a little tint to it. It's going to give you a different reflection than just looking at it without the tinting. And then on the right-hand side, he's talking about filters. Not only the filters that keeps the bugs from hitting us in the face, but the filters, which is our knowledge filter and our values filter. As we're beginning to realize and look at, I do know this, but I don't necessarily know that. And that I value this, but I don't necessarily value that. Then he's looking at, on the left-hand side, the windshield wipers. And on the right-hand side, for us to continually reframe so that we can have a clearer view. So it's the windshield wipers. Keep that windshield clean so that it doesn't get all messed up, and clean it again and again and again so we can get a clearer view of what is actually going on in our world, in our thoughts, in our thinking, in our feelings. And therefore, how is our physiology keeping in strides? On the left-hand side, it has a turn signal. So again, if I'm going to turn left, I'm going to turn right. So we could alert people to know that there's going to be a little bit of a change. And then on the right-hand side, it equates with our body language. And then, although I don't see it on here, he is talking about on the left-hand side that we have a rear view mirror. And that on the right-hand side, it is to use for glancing views of the past, not to live in the past, but you'll have a glancing view as to this may have been something that definitely, as he said at the very beginning, our body is our vehicle for getting through life. And comparing it to a car is a reasonably close analogy. And so we don't want to continually look into that rearview mirror, or we would definitely not be driving correctly to go forward. That it is glancing occasionally to see if we're being overtaken or going for a lot of reasons. Anyway, then also he's talking about on the left-hand side is the trunk and equating that with baggage. Of course, even though we may have a lot of baggage in our trunk, there may be some good things in there that is vital, that we take care of them and keep them in good repair. And then there's two more. One is on the left-hand side is paint or the exterior of the car. And he equates that with our overall fitness and appearance, whether we, keep ourselves up or whether we don't. And then the last thing that he had on the control car analogy is the fuel system. Whether it's electric in a lot of today's things, or whether it's the gasoline, or whether it was being pulled in a cart by a horse. But it's the fuel systems, how it helps us to move. And it equates on the right-hand side with our health and nutrition. So, comments?
I think it's fantastic. That adds a lot to its where I see it now. So it helps me understand. I love the rear view mirror example. Have a quick glance, but come back to where you're going. Get onto the front wheels.
Yeah.
So very, very helpful. Thank you.
So if most of you, I have your email address. I'm not sure I have yours, Alan. If you would maybe put it, either give it to me now or put it in the.
Well, it's my Alan Grills, one name, ALAN GRILLS.
Okay.
At gmail.com.
Okay. Well,
thank you very much.
I will make a copy of these and send them to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting to me how many more details he has in that car than the one we have today. I mean, it's there, some of it. I mean, like the what was it? What's the book on the steering wheel now has been put into different views with the information from the outside coming in. Just how he evolved all of these ideas.
Right. And I'd really like to know when the first one that came out being more like this, so that how many years or how many months went between the little.
Right. I have one that I think came out in 87. It was 80 something, Mona. They're all downstairs, so I hesitate to take off and go pull them up, but I will before we meet together and let you know. And they're all, some of them are printed different sizes, of course. Some of them are printed the same size. Some of them fold.
Right.
But essentially they had it just evolved as it did. And I've never studied them minutely to see where the exact differences are. But
I've caught a couple of them that was different, but it wasn't anything. I don't know that I even made any kind of I don't have history on it.
Right. Well, the front wheels were thinking and doing, and he changed doing to acting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's a small, and you'll still catch some of the saying doing because that's the way we were taught at the beginning. Right. But it's the acting, he's labeled it as the acting, our actions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did he differentiate? How did he differentiate between doing and acting? I mean,
I don't,
I understand that he's changing words, but I don't understand what the difference is between the two.
I don't know, Sue, other than acting might have more to do with the thought behind it. But then sometimes we act without thinking too.
But yeah, we do.
Yeah. Or is it maybe the acting is actually the act of doing something, of being
Oh.
visible from, as
That
opposed
might
to
be.
that if you're acting out, whether it's positive or negative, it would be more visible than thinking about or doing. Well, I don't know.
I always like from, a counseling questioning perspective, I always like the idea of asking, what do you think about doing that? What do you feel about thinking that way? What do you think about feeling that way? I always liked those pieces, especially when people were more in the back wheels.
Yeah, I like that too, because it's just like it's just like, well, I never thought about it like that. What am I thinking about whenever I'm doing that?
Right. I've just
And
always loved that piece.
yeah, gives them a new perspective, gives them the way to know themselves a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, it also, I mean, the car always, it's always interesting to me because in working with schools love the car. They just absolutely adore the car because it's a great metaphor with kids, and who's got your keys, and they spend huge amounts of time with all of that. Not so much the idiosyncrasies that you presented to us just now, about the use of the rear view mirror and, how we do that. That would be such a nice use. And I can't say that I've ever done that or looked at it before, because I don't think I've ever seen the car presented as you've just done, Mona. So, that's really helpful to see that there's more to it.
Right. And when it's on here where it starts the starter for the car itself, and he looked at the scales for the human being, for the body part, and he calls it neurotransmitters. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, neurotransmitters are, in the brain, those are like the scientific chemical way to explain the hormones and explain the neurotransmitters going on in the, it's, you haven't, the serotonin is going and the dopamine is going and all the other neurotransmitters, like that is the brain verbiage for the chemical running through our brain.
Yep.
Right, Alan, I see you shaking your head.
Yes, yes, exactly. The four of them in particular. Yes, that's correct.
Right. So it's not like he made up the neurotransmitters that brain people talk about neurotransmitters,
But it's interesting the psychiatrists back then would even talk about that, because quite often psychiatry doesn't go there in that period of time. So I'm surprised and I'm glad to see it because it was there already.
Well, but also what's really interesting is when psychiatrists are prescribing drugs, the drugs they're prescribing are fake neurotransmitters.
Well, yes, I know, but
like that's really what they are. And so the conversation about that each neurotransmitter has, like the way I learned it, each neurotransmitter has a parking spot.
Mhm.
So now when you're giving a chemical instead of the neurotransmitter, it's taking up the parking spot. So even though you're hoping that the brain will start producing enough of its own,
Mm.
now the parking spot for it is taken.
Yeah.
Eric
Yeah, no,
Jensen,
mhm. Yes.
I'm sorry, Eric Jensen
Nope.
also described like the idea of rewards. And when we give rewards to kids, that the brain considers that a neurotransmitter and will start taking up the parking spot
Mm.
for that particular neurotransmitter.
It's a good point. Mhm.
So, you know, I can't talk about it in any more scientific manner, but that's how I learned it from, you know, Eric Jensen as a brain-based instructor. So
That's very
take it,
helpful.
that's
Mhm.
worth.
Yeah. And as you know, from my research with looking at Dr. Glasser, I'm a newbie here, but I know he and Peter Bregan both graduated from Case Western, and neither of them wanted or did prescribe chemicals,
Right,
uh,
right.
as you know. And as you know, too, like if you add a chemical, the brain adjusts itself and reduces the amount it needs. So it's a false promise because you add it and it says, oh, I've got too much, so I'll pull back on the manufacturing.
Right.
So anyway, good stuff for another conversation, I'm sure.
In this comparing the body with the car with the body, he looks at the wheels from three different ways. He has the wheels, front wheels and back wheels, and they are the components of our four behaviors. And then he looks at the front wheels simply as steering, and they're and so through the body, it's an arbitrary control of what we're going to, what we're thinking and what action it will lead to. And then it also has the third one, it has the it's a four-wheel drive, meaning that those back wheels are just there. And then his definition of it is those back wheels have moments when those back wheels feel good. And I suppose that's whenever we as individuals is learning to realize that those back wheels are important, but they are those emotions are not to get away with us.
It can be consolidating too, right? The message comes into the brain, goes emotional, goes cognitive side, so you got thinking and behavior, and then the message comes back through to the emotional side again. There's a sense now of appreciation and exposure, having made the new choice that now feels good as a result of that. That seems to be the mechanics of the brain through the corpus callosum. Okay, so in and out, and well-being results. I don't know if that's clear or not. And sorry, it's a bit Irish.
And it's not to say that whatever those feelings are, I mean, it can be great sadness, it can be great disruption. I mean, it can be, I mean, all the wars and all the floods and everything that's going on, from time beginning, that's still going on. That definitely does spark the emotions.
Yes.
But it's having them on that four-wheel drive as opposed to being the steering mechanisms. We can let those emotions follow in a more conducive way.
There's a quieting needed, a quieting down to allow that to happen. And I often find sitting with a person for 5 or 10 minutes, breathing and being quiet, so that the heart sends a good message to the brain, says, everything's under control. Now we can have a fresh look at that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that sits with you and your experience or not.
Yeah. I was reading an article about Carl Jung, and he was talking about that well, I won't go there, but it was real powerful that he had someone had come to him in great distress, and he asked them to go and talk with all the people in his neighborhood, you know, as to what their input was about life in general, and would go to another one and go to another one and go to another one, and they all kept giving basically the same thing, that you know, there are times when you don't have any money, there are times when, you know, death comes, sickness comes, there are times when that, and finally this person goes back to the guru and just starts sobbing and says, I understand now what you're trying to tell me, that I am not unique in this, that it's a worldwide thing,
That's
and that
beautiful.
we need to accept it and do what we
Beautiful.
can and go on.
Mhm. I'm looking at the map. It says total knowledge filter. So I guess that's what's going on in there, would you say? Looking at the real world and then coming back to it and
Yes.
seeing some of it penetrating and some of it not. And I guess it's hitting the values in there as well. That's very insightful. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to turn the recording off, and then we'll continue to talk if anyone has comments.